Good afternoon or morning or whatever time is in your country. To all of you, I'm very happy to be here trying to contribute to kick this COVID virus away from our lives. So I hope you all are well. And my presentation today I'm going to share with you will be regarding implant occlusion. I will share that with you. So I hope you can all see my desktop. So we've been all talking about occlusion on teeth and implants. And it's always the same old problems. And today we'll try to bring for you some solutions that the new technologies actually provide us with. It's very interesting to hear forever and ever all kind of advices of what we should do with our patients when we replace teeth with implants. So we have been proposed to use cuspid guidance as a general rule, a narrow occlusal table, a low cuspal inclination, progressive loading of the implants. What a weird idea. Light occlusal contact in the implants, but then the implants should touch when the patient bites hard. We have been very concerned about occlusal overload causing loss of osseointegration. And we have also been advised to use eventually soft occlusal material to protect our implants. Now we all have to recognize that there is nothing in the literature to support most of these advices. So most studies are limited. Prosthetic studies are very difficult to make and very expensive, so that's why we normally don't have their answers. So these recommendations are mostly based on experience and common sense and the available knowledge. They're not really into strong evidence. So every article you might review on occlusion on implants will end up similar to this one, providing this advice: occlusal anterior guidance, low cusp incline, central fossa locations. But interestingly enough, this is what was already proposed by Albrechtson in 1986. So it's fairly sad to see that not much is changing over time. So we'll try to be a little bit practical today, and we have to try to individualize somehow or customize the situation of our patient. Unfortunately, we don't have very much of an objective way to measure the load the patient is going to make. As we see this lady in the picture, she's got very strong masseter muscles, and that's probably, together with the wear of the teeth, one of the few indications we have that this patient might overload our implants. And we would like to have a dynamometer like physiotherapists have to figure out that doctors, when you're recovering from an ictus, then they see how much force you have in your hands. We have some tiny devices that we could use in the mouth, but it's not very practical for a very daily basis. So we have to generalize and recognize which are the load risk scenarios. And if we can look at all the scenarios we have in the clinic every day, we should agree that these two are the most critical. Single posteriors and partial posteriors are the situations where our implants are getting most load. If you combine that with a patient that has a bruxing habit, we have to interfere that our implants are going to be mostly very overloaded. So what can we do to oppose that situation? So let me offer you some things that we can do to control the load. We can work on the number of implants in multiple cases. We can also be using a more strong implant design to counteract the load. We have to be very careful and very specific on the design of the superstructure and how we connect the superstructure to our implants. We have to be aware of different properties of the different materials, and we'll go over that. And then last, we can talk about occlusal scheme. And as I just told you, we don't have much on that. But I can show you a way we are using to try to be very fair to the implant and how to adjust our restorations later on. So how about the number of implants? In a fully edentulous, it's not a big problem. Of course, this doctor didn't have a big problem when he designed the case, but maybe this is not the right solution. This is a good day at the office, of sure, but it's just too many, and this is no idea what we should do. So we've gone through everything. In the 90s, we didn't trust the implant so much, so we normally in a posterior partial case like this, we would just do one implant per tooth, which we wanted to be in their safe side. Then we got a little bit comfortable with the technique and started to single units in the posterior, which is kind of complicated and maybe not the best idea. Then later on, we got overconfident and we figured out we don't need an implant for every tooth. That has advantages, but this time we thought the implants were forever, so two were definitely enough. And I see more and more we coming to the beginning and closing the circle where we're actually using one implant per tooth, thinking on future implant losses. So I would go safe in the cases we expect some overload and more number of implants. How about the design and the connection? Now, it's no question about the advantage of the internal connection versus external. If you look at this picture, if you put some pressure on that table, the leg of the table will support all the force, and that would be an external connection. Now, the same load applied on the same part of the table, but then the table is leaning towards a wall, that would be an internal connection, meaning the load is distributed in the body of the implant and not necessarily is all going to the screw, which is what happens in the external connection. So to me, there is no question that like a single posterior implant should always be restored with a direct connection to an internal type of implant. That will be the most reliable, biomechanically speaking, situation. So for single posteriors, let's go direct to the implant. If we have a cone, and a deep cone would be even much better. The problem we have with multiple is that we cannot really use the internal connection. So all these CAD/CAM centers will actually cut off the internal connection because they're not able, nobody's able to fit at the same time several internal deep connections. So they get rid of it, and all of a sudden when we move to a multiple situation, even we have an internal connection implant, all of a sudden we have an external connection situation, which is less favorable biomechanically speaking. So we have a problem in this situation, and we've gone over with the engineers like Jordi and Archimedes, and this is the most unfavorable situation. We have a bone level implant with no internal connection. There's a lot of leakage, there is no stability. So this is a way not to go. We don't want to put two bone level implants with no abutments direct to the implant. There is no seal, and all the load is going to go to the screws. So the question was, what can we do? Well, we can use abutments. Intermediate abutments will give you seal, but then again, you have an external connection all of a sudden. So you're losing the advantage of an internal connection as far as load distribution. So the question is, can we have two internal connections at the same time? Well, we can have that, but it's not very easy. Only in the case that you have two implants that are really parallel, the milling center will be able to make for you two cones at the same time. But that's only if you stay within the manufacturer system. So you cannot use one implant and send the work to another implant manufacturer because they don't have the right geometry and the precision of the milling will not be as good. So we've been doing a number of these cases. When the implants are really parallel, they can mill for us 2 cones, and then we'll have the advantage of the internal connection because we can still get the seal and the stability from the cones. But then we have less load in the screw, and we don't have to use the abutments. So that's only if you stay within the same manufacturer, so they can get this fit down to the micron. I would not advise to mix different system or milling centers if you want to attempt this. Now, next issue is what kind of materials would be better for implants, and there's been a lot of opinions and research on this. Our options are the acrylic resin or the composite. We can use metal ceramic, we can use the silicate, or you can use zirconia. Now, all these systems or these materials have different properties, so it's important that we are familiar with them so that we can make the right choice. So what are these properties we should know about our materials? Resistance is a very important one. Surface hardness is another one. The wear of the material itself and the wear of the antagonistic tooth is a very important issue in our decision-making process. The aesthetics that the material has, and we have to briefly review all of this. Now, there is an issue with zirconia because it's a growing use of zirconia we're seeing nowadays, and there is a lot of fear to zirconia. So we hear every day things like, it's too hard. Last time this morning in the online session we had at the university, one of the students said it's too hard. It will wear the opposing tooth. It's ugly because it's too opaque. It's too heavy. I've heard that a lot as well. We cannot adhere to another materials. It cannot be printed, could be one of the limitations, and it's got the low degradation. Now, I have to tell you that of these 7 fears, only the 3 last ones are true, and there is no reason to fear zirconia for any of the first 4 ones. Let's go over it briefly. Weight. Now, I was hearing this so often, I bothered to weigh one total zirconia monolithic restoration, and it's about 30 to 50 grams. I don't think 50 grams is too much. You can see this one is lower, it's not very big, and it's 32.72 grams. So I don't think that's an issue at all. Now, how about the aesthetics and the translucency? I know the manufacturers, they're working on this. Now we have new zirconia that have higher crystals, bigger crystals that actually would let the light go through, and it will be more translucent. So this was on one of the shortbacks of zirconia. It's not a shortback anymore because we can have all kinds of colors and translucency available. Now we have to understand that these zirconias might not be as strong. We'll talk about strength and we'll talk about hardness, which are very different issues. Now, strength is within the material, and we'll see the numbers of strength in the lower table. You can see here, and surface hardness will actually add to the long-lasting property of the material. So a material that is very hard will actually do not wear, will stay very much intact, but can be brittle, as we can see later. Glass is hard, but can be brittle. So it's not the same thing, strength and hardness. You see the numbers here. Regular ceramics are within 160 of strength. Zirconia goes up to 900 or 12 or 1,200. Lithium disilicate is somewhere in the middle of 400. Now the hardness of the surface is very hard for all of the material, but you can see that zirconia is 13,000, which is 3 times as much as the other materials. It means it will not wear itself. It will be long-lasting, which is a very important issue. In this little chart, you can see how when you make a more translucent material in zirconia, it will be not as strong. So the 4Y and the 5Y, normally we are using the 4Y now, is somewhere in the 750, which is still twice as much as lithium disilicate. So it's not as hard as the opaque zirconia, but it's still hard enough and harder than other materials we can use. I don't mean hard, but mean stronger. Now, how about the abrasivity of the opposing tooth, which is a concept that sometimes is mixed up? Now, the wear of the opposing tooth is a direct relation to the surface texture of the material. For instance, you see a microphotograph for IPS Emax here, and you get closer, you see all these little crystals. Now, these crystals are very abrasive for the opposing tooth. And it's a pity because this is, to me, one of the best materials we have available. And the only concern I have with this material is the surface. It's too abrasive. Now, when we see these crowns, we see them very, very smooth. You can see when this is glaze, you see this layer of glaze is about 10 microns only. And then this will wear eventually quite fast. And then what's waiting for us when this glaze layer is gone? These little crystals again, and these are very abrasive for the opposing teeth. So surface wear is a product of surface texture. So the best for these are the composites. You see the Emax here on the upper left, how grainy, how scratchy it looks. And this is the hybrid composites. They're very smooth, very good for opposing. So this is the most interesting study. You see all the materials here, and I'll just call your attention about the colors. The amount of wear of the material itself is in blue, and the wear of the opposing tooth is in green. And then the add up of both numbers are here. On the left, you can see the enamel, which is the control for all of us. But then you see these are composites and PMA. They wear themselves very fast. Of course, they don't wear the opposing teeth because they're very smooth, but they disappear fairly fast in the mouth. And then when you go to other materials, you see the combination like Lava Ultimate is here. And then you see all like Enamic is here. But then when you go to this one, which is the second one on the left is Zirconia, you see there is no wear of the Zirconia itself at all. There is no blue line. But then the green line is half as much as the enamel. So we have to see that Zirconia is not is very smooth in the surface, which is very good for the opposing tooth, even better than the enamel. You see this microphotograph of Zirconia polished out of the lab, and this is a Zirconia when the dentist touch it, which is something we should not do. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if you adjust the enamel, the Zirconia in the mouth, you can have to polish them. And there are specific polishing systems for Zirconia. Look at this is Zirconia polish, number D here. And this is enamel as control. So polished Zirconia, even if we touch it in the mouth, polished Zirconia is smoother than enamel itself. But we have to use the right tools. Now, how about adhering zirconia, which is one of the limitations? We cannot really talk about adhering zirconia yet. And there are a number of teams working on this. They're pounding the zirconia with CO lasers and different airborne particle abrasions, and they're getting some progress. So we're very much interested in the progress of this research, because it seems to me that somehow we're going to be better adhering zirconia. That would be great, especially for minimally invasive rehabilitations. We cannot use it now because we cannot really adhere very tiny tabletops or onlays to teeth with zirconia. That's why we have to use either composite or lithium disilicate. So we're looking at progress. How about printing? Because one of the problems with zirconia is that it should be milled. But we have good news about this. We have already a couple of companies. One is in Austria and other in Germany. They're able to print zirconia. Now, printing is a great advantage because you can print tiny parts with very weird geometries, which we cannot do. Unfortunately, as far as teeth, there is already a printing dental zirconia machine, but we can only print so far the ugly zirconia, the opaque white zirconia. But I'm sure that will change in the near future. So we're very, very much attentive to that progress. Now, the last thing I want to share with you is the low temperature degradation. And this is a weird phenomenon that is probably one of the problems with zirconia. And it's a long-term infiltration with water or saliva in this case. But we are not really sure what's the damage that's going to be made to zirconia in the long term. So we have to be aware of this. And as I said, you can polish zirconia in the mouth and still will be very smooth. But touching zirconia in the mouth or after being crystallized will probably increase the age of the zirconia. We don't know what the consequences for that, but we need to be aware of that. So the recommendation for posterior teeth would be for single units. Ideally, you want to use a tie base, a titanium base, and have a zirconia or a disilicate crown on top. Zirconia is better because it's smoother and stronger than disilicate, and we can stick it to this titanium base. So that would be the recommendation for posteriors as much as it is possible. Now, the last thing for the posterior singles and small restoration is how we adjust it. And we have been told we have to leave a very light occlusion on our crown or implant crown to protect our implant. That's really nonsense. There is no research behind that. Even though it looks logical, but not everything that's logical, it makes sense, is true. So we need to know more of that. Now we have information that it comes from very far behind that we should use in our advantage. Now we all know that the teeth move, and people are concerned because teeth move, and then they will actually adapt. Now look at this patient, because I want to share with you some thoughts about how load goes. This is a patient with a gold restoration, and it's against any law because you can see it has 2 premolars hanging from one single abutment, as you can see here, right? Now this restoration has been in the mouth for 32 years. And it's only 1 abutment and 2 pontics, 1 on each side. And how can this be possible? Of course, gold is soft. Of course, this patient is not a Braxer, but basically you see the occlusal scheme this patient has. It is very vertical. So these teeth have been loaded vertically for 32 years, and that's why probably they're still there. So when we try to customize a treatment for our patients, we want to make sure, sorry about that, we want to make sure that we realize if the patient has guidance or no guidance. Because this patient with no guidance, we have to expect more lateral loading and maybe more parts loosening, because we are loading laterally all these teeth, as opposed to people with anterior guidance where actually teeth only touch, like the patient we just saw, vertically. What does this mean? This means this patient can get away with a small implant and a big crown, and this patient maybe needs 3 implants for 3 crowns because it's going to be loaded more than the other patient. Because most people have somehow bilateral group function most of their lives. So cuspid guidance is a rare, very rare occurrence in nature. So we have to expect these people to load laterally the crowns all the time. So that's the reality. We have to prevent that load with our system. And also cuspid guidance is not really an issue, you see. This is a very interesting study, an old study already. This is telling us which teeth touch when. And then you can see that most of the time, you can see this is 3 millimeters away, the white, 2 millimeters away in our guidance. Now, even if when we are 2 or 3 millimeters away, most teeth are touching. So you can see the cuspid guidance is working only when you are like 3 or 4 millimeters away from the maximum intercuspation. But most of the time, every tooth, every posterior tooth is going to be touching. So that's reality, and we have to do our planning knowing that. So how do we adjust then the partial restorations? Okay, we know the teeth move, they move as much as 50 or 60 microns side to side. They move as much as 30 microns vertically. People tell us that we should put less occlusion in the implants so that they will not be overloaded when patient bites, and we will only let the implants really touch when people bite really hard. This is more an illusion than a reality. First of all, because this is very difficult to do clinically. How can we do that? And second of all, because I show you later how people don't do what we think they do. So we think people bite and chew the way we articulators do, but that's not the reality. Look at this example. This patient just got these 4 implants and 4 crowns over 4 implants on the right. Now these implant crowns are touching too much. You can see it's high, maybe 300, 400 microns. So I go ahead and do a T-scan for this patient. All the implants are here, and I figure I'm going to see a very high peak on the right. But guess what? This patient is not biting really on these high implants. I'm not seeing any peaks on the right here where the implants are in this diagram. And that made me think a lot about these kind of things. This same patient, we recheck 6 months later, and there is no occlusal error at all. You see how this patient bites now? I changed the side. Now the implants are here on the left of your screen. I still don't see any biting on the implants at all. What does this mean? People have a way of chewing and functioning that sometimes is different than what we think. So we should let people just get used to the new restorations when we deliver. Next issue is, this is a very common clinical situation. This picture from Giuliano, he lent to me. Now, you deliver this implant crown and the patient tells you it's high. It's always high, we know that. Now we'll see why is that. But say you are tempted to make the patient feel comfortable, which is an error, it's a mistake at this time. Now, you want to make the patient to feel comfortable. Where do you touch? I mean, where is that you want to adjust this ceramic? Because as I can see, the same as you can see, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 contacts in this crown. Which one do we touch? And there are studies that show us that we normally are not able to recognize the right place. If you were to use the T-scan to figure out where the most pressure is, and then check if the dentist can find it, you see this study, 295 dentists, you ask them to choose the strongest point where you would actually use your bird to adjust the occlusion. Now, only 10%, 12% got the right place, the place with more pressure. It means that even if we adjust, we probably get it wrong. So I will share with you what we have been doing for a number of years now. We quantify the error. We have to use very thin paper. And then we have the patient bite, and the crown is always high. This is the implant crown. And then the front teeth don't touch because the crown is high. Now we use the 12 micron paper. It won't grab. Now you twist it in two. Now you have 24 micron paper and have the patient bite. Now if the patient grabs, it means your error is under 24 microns. Now what happens is teeth move. Now there is a number of reasons why these teeth are touching on the wrong way. Because this patient did not have a provisional. This tooth maybe was extracted a number of months ago. And either way, even if the crown was perfect, the patient will feel it like it's very high. So my approach to this is, as I know these teeth move, of course the implant is not going to move, but the opposing tooth is going to move. And you just let the patient go and do not adjust the tooth. And then if you are adjusting two natural crowns, you can let go with 50 microns error. But if one is an implant and the other one is a crown, it's only 24 microns. We know these opposing teeth can move, and that will happen over the next 2 or 3 weeks. I've been doing this for a number of years, never had any problems. So my advice is quantify the error with thin paper, let functional adjustment, meaning the patient will function with their own occlusal scheme, and the teeth will actually adapt to each other. This has the advantage of not touching the ceramics, and also that the adjustment that the patient is going to make is going to be more real and more natural than what you can do with your bird and our limited sight and limited way of knowing where to touch. Now, we always have to bring the patient back 2 or 3 weeks later. About 90% of the patients don't feel anything and are pretty happy. They don't need any adjustment. Depending on what they tell you, you can either adjust or let them go 2 or 3 more weeks if they're doing well. Some people are faster, some people are slower to adapt. And if you have to touch, then polish with the right tools depending on the surface you are touching. Never use any bar over 40 microns diamond. Okay, and we are going to finish with the occlusal design and occlusal adjustment of the fully edentulous patient. Now, articulators, we have many types, are very simple devices that don't get any close to what the patient is doing. Now, this is the patient, and this is what we would like to have the articulator patient. This is a very professional patient, and he knows how to do protrusive. You see the right lateral and the left lateral. Now, this patient never does that. He's just doing it to make me happy because he's a very nice patient, and he's been in the dentist too many times. But patients don't do that. Patients function differently. So it's very a simple method for us to try to adjust the occlusion doing that. They do this, they open and close, open and close, open and close. And if you look at this, you see the mandible is coming from a different way each time. And this is without food. Depending on the days, the type of food, then the mandible would move differently. So it's very pretentious in our side to try to adjust a fully edentulous patient on the first day of delivery. This video was made 1 hour after we placed a full rehab. How about the protrusive? Protrusive is not what we explore. People just open and go and bite. They don't actually grind the upper and the lower teeth. So forget about exploring the protrusion the way we did. So we have to forget about the articulators for this. We cannot get anything out of them. We are making good progress with these digital tools. There are a number of systems that will actually track the motion of the jaw. This actually put together the CBCT of the patient, the scan of the teeth, and then have this Facebook, kinematic Facebook, that actually let the patient chew on their own teeth, and actually the computer will record all these movements, and then we can actually see the bones of this patient moving with their teeth working. Now, this is very interesting, but still the limitation of this is the patient is moving, chewing, depending on what they chew, and chewing with their own teeth. So if the patient has teeth, it's not so interesting to figure out how he's chewing because he already chews all right. People are using this to do breast protection, splints, and things like that. But this is really overkill to do all this setup for a splint. So I'll share with you what we do. This is a fully edentulous patient, implants in the maxilla and the mandible. This is the professional patient I showed you before. So what we are going to do is we're going to make a provisional, a prototype. In this case, we're going to do the lower, and this is going to PMMA, polymethyl methacrylate, and we are cementing this on titanium abutments or pipes or tubes, and then we'll have the patient use this provisional for 2 or 3 months at least. Now, this patient is a Braxer, so 2 months normally is enough because he's grinding on the teeth very hard. Now you can see the wear of the night guard that he uses sometimes, and there is wear on the provisional. So after 2 months of use, you can see this patient actually can grab the 8 microns paper all over his mouth. This is very difficult to get on a regular rehabilitation by occlusal adjustment. Now we got to this point, we just have to duplicate. We need a very good silicone impression of the provisional, and then we'll send this to the lab. So what they'll do is they'll put together the new situation with the anterior project. What you see here in yellow is all the PMMA that the patient actually worn off. And what we do is remove it. So we're going to copy the wear the patient made for these past 2 months. And it's very interesting to see how this copy in zirconia that we are going to make is going to be exactly the same situation, which is functionalized over the past 2 months. Now we make this in zirconia now, and we are fairly sure that the anatomy is corresponding to this one of the provisional. You can see this is full zirconia, monolithic, no layering, only staining. We have changed our protocol. You see the bases here are in zirconia, but now we are actually cementing this horseshoe onto titanium bases so that we have a little bit of cement. Now this is the day of delivery, day 0, and not only the fit but the occlusion was pretty amazing for me because this is very, very uniform for a full rehabilitation we just delivered. We made a splint, and that was it. So my recommendation for fully edentulous until this new system of digital articulators develop more would be to go this way. It's very fast, it's very simple, and it's very safe. A prototype in acrylic, CAD/CAM, let the patient adjust for 2 or 3 months, and then duplicate in zirconia. Straightforward, simple, and safe. So we need to open our minds as far as occlusion, because what we think we know is what we prevents us from learning more, as Einstein said. I thank you very much for attending this seminar. I hope you all are well for the next months, and we can very soon go back to our regular life. And I'm open for your questions, if there are any.
Okay. Javier, thank
Yes.
you for your presentation. I know some cases because we work together once a week and we discuss about this.
Yes, very much
So
so.
now I'm totally converted to the way you work and the way you adjust your patients because I do the same way. So there are 6 questions right now.
Okay.
The first one is asking, what do you think about the effect of the zirconia abutment on the titanium connection in case you use it?
You mean placing zirconia in an internal connection?
Yes, I think so.
Well, I don't think we do that anymore. We have done that. I don't think it's a problem of fracture of the zirconia, but I think zirconia is way too hard and will actually wear the internal connection. We don't know if that's an issue over time, but we definitely don't want to have a component inside the implant that may wear it, because then there is no solution for that. So I don't think it's something should be done. The ideal material to be inside the implant is the same material that the implant is made of, titanium, normally by the same company or the same hardness is better.
There's another question asking, well, it's 2 questions asking the same thing. When you do the PMMA, okay,
Yes.
why not give this restoration as the final one?
Well, because that material is not strong and is not hard enough and is not resistant. So that material is only a provisional material, and it will not be good for more than a few months. So we're looking at a restoration that should last very long. And most of the companies actually will make a deal in which they include in the cost of the restoration, they will include the provisional and the final all together. And I think it's very convenient. And it's a protocol should be like that, because this patient, for instance, because he's a Braxer, is a most indicated case for Braxers. You don't want to be adjusting or touching the zirconia on a Braxer. So this man actually broke the provisional once. We had to make another one and start over 2 months. So I don't think it's a good idea. It will break.
Okay, the other one related to PMMA says when you do bilateral full arch, upper and lower at the same time, do you adjust both, just touch one? And in case you touch upper or lower, which one would be better to be touched to adjust the occlusion as a first trial?
Well, if you can do one at a time is better, because normally you have a harder material in the opposing. So you have, like this patient had metal ceramic in the upper, then it will work very well. And then we did the upper when we had the zirconia in the lower. If you were to do 2 at the same time, I would go with 2 provisionals, 2 prototypes in PMMA, and just let them grind each other for a number of months and then do the same protocol.
Okay. There's one question related to occlusion and cantilevers. It says, what would you do a canine cantilever if 2 implants are placed on both premolars? So you just place in the 4 and 5 and then a cantilever in 3 in the canine. Would you give canine guidance group, or what should you suggest? Yeah.
Okay, if you were to do that, I see no problem, but you will have to try to adjust that into group function. So you have to, okay, theoretically, you want to have all the teeth touching when you move to that working side. Now, having said that, the question is, how do we do this? And to me, you can plan for this and do the design for this. In the near future, we will have virtual articulators that may probably let us make the teeth already with some inclines, cuspal inclines that will actually be compatible with what we want. But then you always have to test that. And that will be a problem, because that cuspid in plastic will tend to break all the time. So either you do a prototype, we do partial prototypes for 3 teeth or 2 teeth, the same as we do for totals. So I would check that with plastic. Maybe you will have to reinforce that provisional with some metal and make it really, really big with a more volume of plastic so that it's stronger, and let the patient chew with that and grind it and then duplicate it in the zirconia. Same thing.
Okay. They are asking if you have any experience regarding fiberglass restorations related to aesthetics and resistance as a restoration material, this hybrid fiberglass.
Fiberglass, I'm not sure if it's very similar to hybrid composites, which is a ceramic in a composite matrix. And probably what they mean is a fiberglass inside composite matrix. I don't use that, but I think the problem with those is the wear long term. So to me, I don't really see those as a definitive material, especially when we're hoping that this restoration will hold a vertical dimension for a long time.
And the last question they are asking, when you find some kind of interocclusal error, okay, when you are just placing the restoration without doing these first settings,
yeah,
do you think that the ATM will suffer, or it will move until it readjusts the occlusion?
No, I don't think the ATM is suffering at all, the TMJ. I think the amount of error we're talking here is less than 50 microns. That will make there is no damage or any consequence for the articulation. The articulation is very far away, and also the relationship between the occlusal contacts and the articulation is more in the myth side than in the reality side.
Okay, so thank you very much for your presentation and your suggestions. This is the end of the questions, because the other ones are just thank you and everything. It's fine. So thank you.